GNL Zamba BABOON Force. A legend.
Yes.
Check.
Greetings, brethren.
Did you have to clap? I think you got to clap.
Okay. Do you know in the 60s, clap meant an STD?
Yeah, I did know that. I think it still does.
What?
I think it still
They
does.
still call
it?
it the clap. I think it's like people my father's age or my grandfather's age who call it a clap.
I mean, in my day-to-day life, in the last decade, no one has come into work and told me that they had to clap. But I also don't have a normal day job, so I don't know.
Yeah. What a time to be alive. Have you thought about how difficult life would be if you were born in the 1600s?
Oh, man, yes.
And there was no cure for the clap or gonorrhea.
Dude,
or
yeah,
syphilis.
you cut yourself, you get a small infection, and then you die.
You die, yeah. Guaranteed. So this is the Zambaland Podcast with Ben Wilkins, and this is episode number 9.
Number
right?
9, yeah, number
episode
9.
number 9.
A little bit of a shout out to Yoko Ono for number 9.
Yoko Ono is also number 9.
Well, she had a big role in the Beatles' White Album, which had Revolution number 9 as a track, and it's very out there.
Tell me a little bit about that, because I've been lately obsessed with the number 9, and you're now telling me it has something to do with the Beatles and a woman poet that I really like.
Artist, poet. Revolution number 9. It's really difficult to describe that track.
Yeah.
It's a kind of almost like an abstract noise track that at one point there's a loop of number 9, number 9, number 9. But it's pretty out there. It's pretty abstract. It's kind of the most out there John Cagean abstract New York art the Beatles ever did.
Okay. And do you believe in numerology? Do you know anything to do with numerology?
No.
I must admit that I also don't really know so much about numerology, but I've heard that there's certain numbers that these numbers mean certain things to certain people, just like people can classify themselves by zodiac signs. You're also a sequence of numbers.
Right.
So in numerology, I don't know what the number 9 stands for, but I've come to understand lately in my old age, very wise and grey, that number 13 and number 9 are actually my lucky numbers.
I
always thought it was 7.
I love the number 13 too.
Why?
I think because people are superstitious about it. And there was also a baseball player I really liked who was number 13, and it was like a ballsy move. It was like I'm a player, and I got to pick my number, and I picked the unlucky number. Unlucky for you,
Yeah.
It's kind of a ballsy move.
That's cool. That's cool. Yeah.
A little intimidating, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I don't know. I don't actually know anything about numerology, but I can tell you something interesting about living in the 1600s.
Tell me.
So, J.S. Bach. Let me make sure I get the dates
the classical
right.
guy?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Are you pronouncing it right? Is it Bach?
Bach. Yeah, it is. Yeah. So hang on. Let me just make sure I get the dates of his life right. I think he might be early.
So he was German, right?
Yeah.
Or Austrian. What was he?
Okay. The dates of his life were 1685 to 1750. Okay.
Yeah.
And so he had 2 wives. One was Anna, who lived from 1721 to 1750.
Yeah.
And the first was Maria, and she lived from 1707 to 1720.
Anna Maria. Okay.
Okay. So J.S. Bach was, if there was such a thing, he would be, I guess, middle class. He was a very well-employed, consistently employed, brilliant genius musician.
Okay.
He basically invented heavy metal in the 1700s. His organ playing was so intense and beautiful and crazy that it the only thing that you could compare it to nowadays would be like a really insane metal solo, where it just goes like on and it's just super fast and technical.
Yeah.
Okay. But very religious guy. He wrote like to the glory of God above every piece of music he wrote.
Yeah.
He probably wrote more music maybe than, I want to almost say, than anyone. He was just constantly working, and he had an enormous amount of children, like I think over 15.
Yes.
I'm going to forget the exact specifics here, but let me just explain this, because this is crazy about the difference between living then and now, right? Now it's like you want to have a kid, you're like, kind of, but I don't know if I can afford it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And a lot of places in the world, people just have a kid and they can't afford it, and you just figure it out. But the idea is like, well, each kid is a bit, requires a good education and lots of nice things, and it's expensive, and you want to make sure you're responsible. But that decision in this 16 or 1700s, people didn't have that mentality, because most people died before they got to become adults. So you had lots of kids, and you were probably not going to make it very long yourself, right? If you got gray hair, you were very lucky.
So did they have lots of kids just in case? So they had about 13 kids. So in case 6 died, they would have 7 left?
Yeah, kind of. I mean, I don't think it was necessarily conscious, but it was just normal that you were always having kids and your kids were always dying. Yeah. So his friend, let's just look at this life. This is a great composer who's a household name today.
Yes.
He's famous. In the old world, he lived one of the best lives, right?
But that's not a guarantee that being a famous artist now necessarily guaranteed that you are a wealthy man. In the past, we've all come to learn, but that most artists make their money posthumously.
Right.
Right,
that's true.
You might find that Shakespeare was broke at some point.
Right. Like Mozart, right, was buried in a mass grave.
Yeah.
So he was hired by churches a lot of the time. To go to Mozart's case, the reason why he was buried in an unmarked grave wasn't because he was broke, but it was because of the jealousy of some other musicians in Austria, wasn't it? I don't think so.
Oh, maybe I'm going by a certain movie that I saw.
I think he left his wife and child more or less destitute and was thrown in a mass grave. Not an unmarked grave, a mass grave. People were dying at such a high rate there. There was plagues going on all the time, right? Yeah. People didn't know about germs, so they would just like take a bucket of poo and pee and just like dump it out the balcony, like right on you as you're walking by. Yeah. And then you wonder why you died of cholera. That's, there was so much. Also, there was like livestock in the streets, and they would butcher animals in the streets too.
Goats,
right? Yeah. It was just stinky and dangerous, but it still had so many economic opportunities that despite the amount of dying that was happening in the cities, people were immigrating to them at such a high rate that the city still had a positive, they still remained the same population, but people were losing their kids and people were dying of plagues and famines and diseases all the time.
And guillotines too.
Oh, and also guillotines at certain times, So Bach, you would have pictured that he would, be living the sweet life. Yeah. And he was consistently, I believe, employed for most of his life, if not all of his life. He was mostly employed by churches to be the organist, and then he also composed all this music and made enough money to raise, 15 to 20 kids. But
15 to 20?
Yeah.
This is like Sound of Music.
Yeah.
Right?
No, it's even more than that. Yeah. So one quick story about J.S. Bach. There's a story that he went to he went over one of the mountains in the Alps to visit another church, and the organist at that church got jealous, and he was like, "I challenge you to an organ duel." And J.S. Bach was like, "Okay, cool, Sunday, bring it, let's do it. We'll do you play some organ.
You bring your organ, I'll bring my organ.
I'll bring my organ, and we'll pipe organ this church. Yeah, and who knows what happens after that? The winner will eat the fattened calf or whatever." So
they were the Bloods and the Crips of that generation.
Yeah, kind of, right? Okay. But it was just like this one organist who like only heard of Bach's reputation but hadn't heard him play. Anyway, the story is the organist heard Bach practicing getting ready for the duel
Yeah.
and was so intimidated he left town and was never seen from again. Never seen or heard from ever
Never
again.
challenged the gods. Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
So, okay, so this was crazy. So he had his first wife.
Yeah.
I think she had 7 kids or something.
Mm-hmm.
And then she up and died, and I forget why, but either disease
Yeah.
or childbirth. A lot of people died in childbirth because
Let me ask you a question, and also because there's a topic that I've been trying to talk to you about, and this kind of like ties into that.
Can I finish the story of him first?
Yes. So you said it was Anne and Maria. I'm going to put a pin in that. His wives were Anne and Maria.
Yeah.
But he had the first wife that died. We'll come back to Anne and Maria, but you're telling me about...
Well, you know, it was a long time ago. They both died.
Yes.
Right? So the first one
Yeah.
was Maria Barbara Bach.
Yeah.
And she had 1, 2... No. Okay. She had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 kids.
Yeah.
Okay, and then I forget how she. Let me just see how she died. Real quick. It's kind of. Can I get to it in time?
For most of the women,
7 children.
Yeah.
3 of whom died in infancy. Okay, so she had 7. This is a classic example. 7 kids. 3 of them died when they were children.
Yeah. Polio, dysentery.
She died. Okay. When Bach left, Maria Barbara was in perfect good health, but when he returned 2 months later, he was shocked to learn that she had died and been buried on July 7th.
Oh, shit.
The cause of her death is undocumented. Okay, so he literally went on a trip, maybe to challenge that guy to a duel.
Yeah, by the time he came back.
An organ duel, and he came back and was shocked to find out that she died and the cause of her death was unknown. But she had 4 kids that were still living.
That's shocking. That's shocking right there.
You can't even get a telegram back then.
Yeah.
You definitely can't update your Facebook status.
Definitely, people complain so much about where we are right now, but the world has moved on so far from all those difficulties.
Oh, man.
And I think we are living in one of the best times, if not the best time ever in human history, no matter what our problems are.
That's 100% true.
But I wanted to ask you about 1600s and where we are right now.
Okay.
And the conversation that I wanted to have with you was the reason usually that you're able to point out women's names from the 1600s to now is if those women were women of high status or came from renowned families.
Yeah.
And I wanted to have a conversation with you about women and femininity and the whole shebang, trying to understand the other.
Let's talk about that.
Yes,
can I first go back and tell you about his second wife?
Yes.
So a year later, or within the year, he married another woman, and she had 13 children.
So
he had 7.
My guess is he married a younger wife.
Yeah. That
could still have
13 children.
13 children.
So
yeah.
and they were like beasts of burden back then. They were just pumping out babies, right?
Yes.
And sometimes they died, and hopefully they didn't. But this is what's crazy, okay?
Yeah.
So she had 13 children, raised them all. Bach was still a successful musician, you know? He was still earning enough to support a family like that, and they were still living in Europe. And after his death, she was destitute. And she spent the last years of her life wandering the streets as a beggar, begging for money.
Whoa. While
some of her children, Bach's children, who were still composers, were still out there. And I don't know why they didn't help her. I don't really understand all of the details surrounding that. But the story is, after marrying this guy, having 13 children, living in the 1700s, her husband dies, and she is essentially now homeless. And I don't know how much that it relates to the fact that women maybe couldn't be landowners.
Yes.
I mean, she obviously didn't get any of the money. Maybe all of his money went to her sons, and they resented her or something. I don't know.
Or maybe the children from the first family, she wasn't good to the children from the first marriage. So there's so many factors to explain that.
Right. Maybe she was really disagreeable.
That too, and also, usually artists live gig to gig. So if the patron was in love with a Bach, the patron of the arts of whatever town that he was in, and he kept on rolling out all these pieces and buying his compositions and featuring him out for these concerts. And after Bach was dead, I don't think the patron would keep on rolling it out to the family. The breadwinner is gone, so someone else takes place of where the old master, what the shoes that the old master wore have to be filled by somebody else.
Right. The situation is just like, how did this happen to this woman who had 13 kids?
Yeah.
Why didn't the kids take her in? And how did it happen that this guy, who is, a household name now, wrote some of the greatest music in the world, wasn't in a position for who knows what reason to leave her any money so that she wouldn't have to die in such a humiliating way.
Yes.
Like, think about that. She did everything she could probably do right. I mean, just think about it. Like, you marry someone this talented and you have this many kids.
Yeah.
And it's this time and where everyone's dying of diseases left and right. And somehow she's okay. But then she's destitute and dies in poverty. Like that kind of story happened.
Also, after you give birth to like 13 kids, who wants to marry you again? That would have been her safety net too. But after you've given birth to 13 kids, probably your whole body has broken down, and
no one wants to. She was certainly very old at the time. Right?
Yeah.
But it's also
sad,
like
it's sad,
it's also like the situation at the time was, I think, if you were a woman, if you needed to be married or unmarried with a father that was supporting you, because there wasn't very much for you to do otherwise.
Yeah. I see. So, coming to my point of
let's go back to what you were trying to talk about.
Like women throughout history, who is your most, and I know this is like kind of a silly question, but when you think about strongest woman, who do you paint in your mind? Strongest woman through history.
Strongest woman throughout history.
Yeah. And don't say your mom. Because everybody's going to say, oh, my mom this, my mom that. But who do you think about when you think about strength and women? And is strength an attribute you attribute to women?
Well, listen, you're really putting me on the spot here. I'm trying to scan through all of the history I've ever learned. And history is mostly written by men about men. So I'm sure there's many strong women that didn't fall into my consciousness. But historically, the strongest woman.
Yeah.
I'm at a complete loss here. As like a
who is the most popular woman throughout history?
The most popular woman?
Yeah.
Eve.
Eve was a bitch.
I don't know.
I don't think Eve even existed. Like the whole thing to me of having a woman called Eve. I just don't get it. Like Eve should be having some East African name that nobody can pronounce in the Northern Hemisphere. So the whole concept of Eve is a story to me.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Right,
so,
because humanity...
So Eve is not real, but I'm talking about women that have ever existed, like Cleopatra, like Nefertiti.
Right.
Like Britney Spears.
Like Laura Secord.
Like who?
She's a Canadian hero.
What did she do?
She sort of risked her life to tell the English soldiers that the Americans were coming to attack the North, which was Canada, which would eventually become Canada. And she walked all night. She walked 40 miles or something with a cow.
With a cow?
Yeah, she thought that bringing a cow would make nobody suspicious of her.
Okay, so...
Because if they saw her walking with a cow in the middle of the night, they wouldn't be like, hey, what are you doing? They'd be like, oh, well, she obviously lives close. Otherwise, she wouldn't be out with her cow.
Yeah.
And then she walked all the way there and then told the guy, hey, listen, the Americans are planning an attack over here. I just heard them talking, 40 miles ago. And they were like, Thank you. You're a real hero. But the backstory is they already knew.
So
She was still a hero. Is the point?
that's not a hero. Like if they already know,
Well, what she did was heroic,
yeah.
right? She could have died out there.
Like in the American story, there's a guy who rides on a horse and then tells all these colonies that the British are attacking or the British are coming or
Yeah.
something like that.
Yeah.
But don't you think they already knew that the British were coming? Isn't that
Okay.
like the same story, right?
I think I have another example of.
Revere, something like that.
I think I thought of the answer to the woman that has the most strength
Okay,
that I can
tell
think
me.
of. Okay. Well, there's a couple, and they're athletes.
China
So
from
there's
the WWE.
there's one woman who just won the Moab. What is it like the Moab? What's this? It's a long distance race. How long is it? Hang on a second.
Okay, like
The
a
Moab
triathlon of
240.
sorts?
It's a 240 mile race,
240 miles.
and this woman ran it and won by 8 hours.
Whoa. Like the distance between her and the woman following was 8 hours.
No, it was a man following. It was a co-ed run.
Okay, so like, it had both sexes.
Yeah,
And this woman,
beat the guy that got number 2 by 8 hours.
wow. What's this woman's name?
I should find it. She's incredible.
And is she a centaur?
She did an interview on Joe Rogan and it was incredible.
Yeah. Is she
see.
like, has she been an athlete like for
Courtney Dawalter,
Courtney Dawalter?
and she ran 240 miles in 2 days and 9 hours and 59 minutes.
So, and there's no resting time between this.
I think you can rest if you want,
Okay.
but then most of them don't. She was talking about how she was hallucinating through it, and like it's, if you could sleep if
Yeah.
it will make you run faster, but
Yeah.
if you sleep after running for a day,
Yeah.
do you think you're gonna wake up and keep running? Like you have.
No.
She
Yeah.
won, and it was 2.5 days. So think about, and she beat the guy by 8 hours.
By 8 hours.
So that's pretty crazy. There's also a woman, and I don't know her name either.
Yeah.
But my sister met her, and she rode across the Pacific Ocean, I believe, in a rowboat.
You can't ride across the Pacific Ocean.
You can't ride a bike across it. No.
Yeah.
She rode in a rowboat.
Oh, rowing.
Yeah.
From where to where? From Japan?
Yeah. From like Japan to Vancouver, BC.
You're kidding. Those waves are too strong.
I mean, there was times where her boat was getting like, she had this boat that she could get in,
Yeah.
and she could lock herself in it if the weather was really crazy. So she couldn't really, even if she
Yeah.
got tossed around, she'd be
Yeah.
okay. And that happened a few times where she like easily nearly died.
That's crazy.
But when the weather was good, then she was.
Wouldn't
in
that
it.
take like 2 months or something?
I don't know how long it took her.
Yeah.
I think she actually did a combination of biking and rowing, and she did the whole world.
Yeah.
So she biked across continents as well, but she also rode. She definitely rode across the Atlantic, and I think she did the entire Pacific as well.
Yeah.
And that's the kind of mental strength, like the woman who did the Moab 240 miles. I cannot imagine the mental strength required to run that far.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's unheard of. And in general, specifically with long distance sports and long distance swimming, it's a thing where women generally outperform men.
Yeah. Do you believe that transgender women should be considered women when it comes to sports?
Probably not, no.
Why?
Well, I don't know. The reason I would say is the divisions are based on biological differences that sort of matter. You know? So if someone gets all the muscular strength and then transitions,
Yeah.
I would imagine they would have an unfair advantage, even if they were technically at that point a self-identifying woman.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, It's a tricky question, right? Because we try to make those categories. We do the men and woman category in some sports where upper body strength, let's say, gives you a huge advantage.
Yes.
And we divide it. But then like these long distance races, there's no point in dividing it. So
Mhm,
it doesn't
mhm.
matter.
Yeah.
Combat sports where men just sort of generally have a much higher degree of strength
Yes.
should fight other men, whereas women
Yes,
who,
yes.
you know, don't should fight other women. It gets tricky though, because
the reason why I asked was because I was watching Dave Chappelle yesterday, and he said, imagine if LeBron James woke up one morning and he revealed that he has always identified as female,
Mhm.
and he joined the female basketball league.
yeah.
He would end up scoring 800 points every game probably, and it wouldn't be fair. So I wanted to get your what you thought about that.
I mean, I don't. You know, it's a really interesting thing. So I just finished watching the World Surf League
Yeah.
event in Chopu,
Uh-huh.
which is like in Tahiti,
Mhm.
and there's this really crazy place in the ocean where it goes up about 3 miles to hit this island, and this island has a coral reef that's shooting out, and there's this channel, this deep channel that's been carved by this river that's been flowing for probably hundreds of thousands of years.
Yeah.
And it's cut this deep channel. So it means that, like, essentially swell water, waves that are moving from the deep ocean
Yeah.
hit this, and there's nothing that it hits before that. All that energy just hits the beach or hits this coral reef, and it creates this crazy wave. And then these guys are surfing, and it's only 2 feet deep while they're surfing with like a bus of water over top of them. Like, it's so dangerous and
Yeah.
so crazy.
Yeah.
It's just wild. So they just finished this event. And the World Surf League is actually, I believe, the first organization to pay women the same as men
Interesting.
for when they win.
Yeah.
And that's an interesting thing because, you know, a lot of the leagues make their money off advertising. So if they're advertising, if their male league makes a whole lot more money in advertising compared to the female
Mhm.
league, it's difficult to justify that. Right.
Yes. Yes.
But and this specific event didn't have women at it because it's so dangerous. Like, I don't know exactly all the reasons why, but
Yeah.
I know that there's not too many women that do surf that wave.
Mhm.
And to try to make it mandatory that every woman who's on tour as a surfer has to surf this crazy wave
Yeah.
might kill some people, you know, or might, you know, it just didn't, for whatever reason, it hasn't been decided upon.
Teach me something here.
Yeah.
So, do you need any kind of strength to surf the wave, or do you need technique?
You need both.
Where do you need the strength?
So surfing is a lot like to say something like martial arts, like boxing, where
Mhm.
you need aerobic and anaerobic. So paddling around is like swimming.
Yes.
That's like aerobic activity,
Yes.
right? But when a wave comes, you need to position yourself quickly. You have to have explosive energy to get to the right
okay,
spot
okay.
quickly.
Yes.
And then you have to have explosive energy to jump up and get on the board. And then what you're doing on the board is like deep, you know, squats and like fast moving.
Yes. Yes.
So you have to be able to get into that mode and then get back into cardio mode.
Okay.
again,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know?
I see what you're saying.
So it's there's a lot of strength, and
and-
there's also a lot of just understanding the ocean, and there's also a lot of room for error. Like, people at this event, the men were wearing helmets sometimes because these waves are so big. There's the guy that won it, Owen Wright. He's sustained brain injuries before, so he wasn't going to risk
Mhm,
that
mhm.
again. So
Yeah.
they had to hit a helmet. You know, it's kind of new.
Where did surfing originate?
Hawaii.
And did it what were the original surfboards like, and how did the sport evolve into what we're seeing right now? Were they cutting palm trees to create stuff that they could stand on? What was it?
So
What were they
surfing,
doing?
I believe, as far as
Yeah.
we know, it was about 5. You know, there's records of it happening. It probably happened for a long longer than that.
Yeah.
But in Polynesia and specifically Hawaii, the kingdom that was there had surfing as a big part, and it was a way of demonstrating manliness. Like, warriors would go out and they would surf waves,
Yes.
and they would surf on wooden boards that usually weighed over 100 pounds. So they would carry these
Yes.
big boards on their head.
Yes.
and paddle out. They didn't have fins. They were just boards.
Yes.
And then they would paddle into these huge waves and ride them. And it was like this warrior domination thing. And
yes.
it was like becoming a man. And it was a symbol of strength. And,
Yes.
it was a big part of the culture. And then when the Portuguese showed up and colonized Hawaii, they banned it because they thought it was, I don't know, immoral or unchristian to have like men and women at the beach together.
Fuck that.
Yeah, fuck that is right. So they banned it for a while, and it was not allowed. And then there was a resurgence of surfing in the like 1950s, and there was where I guess people started doing it in Hawaii, and then there was this Hollywood movie that came out that got everyone into it.
Baywatch?
No. It was a funny, silly movie, but it like created the whole Beach Boys craze.
Yeah.
And all of this, and then people started doing it at Malibu Beach.
Yeah.
Right by the pier. We call it First Point. And then there was, Hawaii was a really big deal, and it was really like the 50s that it really blew up again.
Yeah.
And then since then it's become a worldwide
I don't
phenomenon.
think anybody ever I don't think I've ever seen people surfing in Africa. I think surfing is really a California, Australia, Hawaii thing.
No.
Where in Africa do people surf? South Africa?
Yeah. The World Surf League has a competition at Jefferson's Bay in South Africa. It's an amazing wave. And in what's the movie called? The Endless Summer is a classic surf movie. Part of being a surfer is you're always looking for the best wave. You're always looking for like the ride of your life and the best conditions.
Yeah.
So you'll go to crazy places to try to find that. So this is a travel movie about two guys that go like looking for great waves. And at one point they surf in South Africa on some completely virgin waves where no one's really surfed before.
Yeah.
And they find them and they're just perfect and they're they go a really long way. And some of the greatest surfing footage from that era.
Describe that feeling to me, because is it like I've never surfed in my life, but if you're to describe the feeling, would it be like riding a bike with no hands?
No.
What's it like?
It's like riding a bike with no hands, where the pavement is growing underneath you.
Mm-hmm.
And pushing you forward, and you're falling down at the same time.
Oh, I feel that. Yeah. I see that.
And when you can control it, and the only way to control it is you go sideways, right? Because you need to use your toes and your heels to steer through that. But it's one of these things where you're feeling this mountain growing under you, and you're falling down it. So it's pushing you, and you're dropping at the same time. It feels like flying.
Okay.
It feels like flying, and you're flying on energy that started in a storm on the other side of the planet.
That's interesting. I've never had anyone describe surfing like that, but that's the thing that I'll remember. So it's like flying. It feels like flying.
Yeah. In a way that like snowboarding or skiing or wakeboarding or even windsurfing doesn't feel like flying the same way. Because that, like, snowboarding, or you're going down a hill. Yeah. It's just gravity. Yeah. You're used to that. Yeah. It's really fun, too. And wakeboarding, you're getting pulled. Windsurfing, you're getting pulled by the wind. Mm-hmm. Surfing, the fact that the ground is moving up and pushing you, and then you're falling down. Yeah. It's a different feeling. And it's like the ride, when you watch people surf, the rides are short, usually. It's like 3, 4, 5 seconds. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, but in the highlights of like surf channels, you usually see people like surfing under a wave which is almost curving. It's almost like a semicircle, almost like 3/4 a circle. Yeah. And they're just going through that.
They call that a barrel, right? Yeah. Or a tube. So that's what they just did in Chopu. Mm-hmm. And the barrels were so big. In the competition, I mean, these conditions don't happen that often where it's just perfect. Mm-hmm. The swell directions coming, the perfect angle to hit the reef, the perfect angle to make the wave just perfect. And this last competition was like that. And these guys are standing up. They're competing, right? Yes. So they need to take off, the most critical part of the wave and stay in the tube for as long as possible. Mm-hmm. And when they come out, they're standing up. Like, imagine getting into that position. So dangerous. if you do anything wrong, you're gonna be the lip
You're gonna be
that
tumbling.
goes
Yeah.
right into the 2-foot reef. Like you're gonna maybe die.
Yes.
And these guys get into the right position, get it under control. They jump up on their board, and then they stand there and they watch like a room of water flying over them while they're totally in control.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they describe that as the best feeling ever.
It sounds good. Sounds good as you're describing it.
I mean, the stuff that these guys are surfing, very few surfers ever surf that dangerous.
So where's this
of a
place that you're
situation.
talking about? Is it you say Topu?
It's called Chopu.
Chopu. Where is
and
it?
it's in Tahiti.
My geography is bad. Where is Tahiti?
It's like northeast of New Zealand, south, let's say deep south of Hawaii. It's in the South Pacific. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have no follow-up to that, except that I'm thinking about how New Zealand is one of those places that I've always wanted to go to. It's on my bucket list. And I always remember New Zealand because in Uganda, very many of my friends used to play rugby. And that was one of the teams that they used to support the most during the World Cup if our team didn't make it.
Okay.
So you look at New Zealand and you follow waves wherever they go. Some other people just look at all those other places that you've mentioned and just think of, oh, that's where the best rugby team is and that's where the best football team is. And
right.
Yeah, like you speaking about surfing to me with this enthusiasm that I know you love it with is the same way I would be looking at probably cricket.
Cricket.
Yes.
I love this.
Do you play cricket?
No, but I've met people who love it so much that I'm excited to hear about it. I've never even played it, but I love the thought that there's this game that I don't know that it's so fun.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So, yeah, it's the same, and the feeling of sending a ball flying through the air, and nobody's going to be able to touch it, is the same way I was hearing you describe. Where you time the ball and it's the perfect swing in the right moment and it's flying over.
Yeah.
And you know it in your bones that nobody's ever going to touch this. This is over the boundary.
Right.
That's the same feeling of a person standing in this killer wave.
Yeah.
That is walls high, and he's in control of the whole thing.
Right.
Yeah. So
I think that's pretty similar analogy, like a home run, or a cricket home run, and that dream wave. It's similar in some ways.
Yeah.
That kind of like time stops.
Yeah.
I mean, when I see a surfer do that, and there was a few on this competition. There was like this. There's this guy that I've actually paddled out and seen him in the water. He's incredible, and he's on tour now. But he's in San Clemente. He's from San Clemente. His name was like Griffin Colapinto. Yeah, and he's like the stoke on his face when he finishes. Like he did a couple crazy waves in this competition, and when he came out, he like hooted like a chimpanzee. Like it was like something so deep in him. Yeah, screamed. It was so funny to watch, and everyone that watched it saw him do that, and we all were like so happy for him that he got to experience it, and so proud of him that he accomplished it, and so delighted. It was a stoke. Yeah, and it's like, that level of joy is like.
So where does he rank on the world's best surfers?
Well, he's on tour.
Okay.
So he's on the championship tour. So I think there's only like 32 that are on this championship tour. Yeah. Or maybe there's a few more than that. Every event there's more than that to get into it, but that's because they always do like local wild cards. Yes. So there was guys that were in this event that were just guys that lived and surfed that wave all the time. Yes. But they got to surf against the best in the world, who just go to every wave. And those guys did great. Like there was a couple surfers that live there that are local guys. One guy was like 17. Yeah. And he was incredible, and he beat some really good surfers. Yes. To get where he was, and then eventually got it eliminated. But it's like a tournament. It's like the World Cup or something every time.
So if you were to think about what sports were present in the 1600s, what would those be? that you would bet there would be.
In the 1600s?
In the 1600s, were they surfing? So definitely there was surfing.
In the 1600s, there was only surfing in Hawaii.
Surfing in Hawaii. And you don't think football had been invented? Like soccer?
Oh, probably, yeah. I think so.
And you told me about a sport which the Incas were already doing. Which sport was that? Was that volleyball?
I didn't tell you
Hockey?
that.
I think it was hockey, ground
lacrosse.
hockey. Lacrosse, right?
That wasn't the Inca, that was the Native Americans. Yeah.
So 1600s had lacrosse. They had some surfing. I'd like to think soccer had been developed already.
I think so. I think it's like in the 1400s or something. Yeah.
Okay. What else would be for sport in there?
Bow and arrow stuff, probably.
Cricket. Bow and arrow, definitely.
I mean, they had jousting, right?
What's joust? Oh, the one with the horse.
Sword fighting. And,
Yeah.
And then jousting with the horses.
Yes. I wonder if there were any women jousting back in the day. Like
only if they tucked their hair up in the helmet and pretended to be a man.
And I don't think they even had helmets for boobs.
Well, I mean, that just depends what movies you watch.
Yeah. Okay.
You know?
Yeah.
I think. Now there was all kinds of games back then. Chess is really old too, right?
Where did chess originate? Is that a Russian thing?
Don't think so. I think chess was like monasteries in like the 1100s or something. Like chess is very old. Chinese chess is also extremely old.
Yeah. So if you say monastery, why do you discount Russia? Doesn't Russia have monasteries?
Yeah, but I don't really know. Yeah, I mean, yeah. I don't think it was in. Yeah, maybe.
The reason why I say Russia is because isn't rook a Russian word? Rook
sounds
Pony.
sounds very like Anglo-Saxon.
Like Viking?
Yeah.
Almost. Okay.
Like yeah.
Yeah, but those are like games. You wouldn't consider those like sports. I'm talking about stuff that involves some kind of physical. You have to put in some physical.
Right, like a contest, and then you get to marry a princess when you win.
Some shit like
Actually,
that.
in ancient China, here's a good one.
Yeah.
China was one of the first geographical locations where there was a kingdom that thought that education was the way you should advance yourself.
Okay.
So there was a dynasty that said that, like, essentially, every year there would be an academic contest.
About how much you've learned.
Not about how much you've learned. There was no classes. There was just all the books that existed, all the knowledge that was.
Mm-hmm,
okay?
Mm-hmm.
And the way you would win the contest is you would lock yourself in a small room, like very small, like so small.
Yeah.
Like you're going into an outhouse almost.
Yeah.
Okay? And you'd lock yourself in there for several days. And when you came out, you were supposed to have like the new best written essay that was, you know, a new way of thinking about the art that existed, or it needs to be really important. And then there would be a group of scholars that would review all of the papers that came out, and they would award a winner, and that winner would be able to marry a princess and essentially become in the upper class.
Interesting.
So you could be poor and really, really smart and really, really hardworking, and use education to change classes. That was a very new concept.
Yeah.
That happened in like 700 AD or something.
700? That's so early.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I believe that was Tang Dynasty. Yeah, it was early.
Yeah.
Way earlier than like almost anywhere else.
But why was the idea of like marrying princesses so dope? What if the princess was ugly? Like you being a princess doesn't change shit. If the princess doesn't look good, I'm not marrying her.
If you're like broke and have no access to anything,
dude, if she's ugly, I'm not taking her.
Yeah, but it's like how kings used to just like keep marrying people because they had lots of land.
Yeah.
It was like, it wasn't about that. It was about something else. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It was like, it's like, yeah. I mean, in those days, even the concept of marriage a lot of the time was a formality. It was more like, you know,
I'm marrying you for status.
You conquered some land, and then you had to marry a princess to like not have to go to war again.
Yeah.
And that's what they would say. They'd be like, hey, listen, we can fight, or you can marry my daughter, and then inherit all this land. And the guy a lot of the time would be like, oh, I'll marry your daughter. Add her to the crew.
Yeah.
You know, party bus.
And the whole thing of like women from time immemorial have never really been looked at as people. It was just a means to something else. Like, it's a way for me to strengthen my family and I don't care how my daughter feels, but I'm just going to give you this daughter of mine, and I don't even give a fuck how you're going to treat her, but as long as it's going to help me
yeah, they were like cattle.
Strengthen my empire, you know?
Yeah.
Because I'm even looking at like how I see some of these movies, and you look at families that are bickering, and then that's where you want their son to marry your daughter. Like, what are you sending your daughter into? Like,
Right.
These are people totally fucking hate you, you know?
Yeah.
You know? So
when I went to Africa,
Yeah.
I shouldn't say Africa. It's obviously a
Yeah.
huge continent.
when you went to the country called Africa?
When I went to the country called Africa, when I went to Tanzania,
Yeah.
we went and visited a Maasai market,
Mm-hmm.
and it was pretty funny. And I was in high school, and the Maasai guys walked up to me and offered me different amounts of cows for the girls in our group.
Yes.
They were like, "Can we have her?"
5 cows.
Yeah, but the ones I thought were pretty, it was like 4 or 5 cows.
Yeah.
But the ones that were like really fat,
yeah.
it was like 40 cows, 50 cows.
Exactly.
It was a different thing, right?
Yeah.
But so my question to you, with that in mind,
Yeah.
is because that blew my mind. That felt like going back in time a little bit. That
Yes.
felt like
Yes.
really like seeing women as a resource that I would be able to trade,
Mm-hmm.
and or I'd be able to trade, and B, like that you could trade that for something like cows or something. Seemed crazy to me at the time, but that's the ancient world. That's the way it was everywhere before.
Mhm.
So I guess that's an ancient kind of culture in
Yeah.
sub-Saharan Africa. What in where you grew up, I imagine it wasn't like that.
Oh, where I grew up is the same. It's the same, except the Maasais have more cows. You get, but where I come from, it's the same thing. It's the same, and the tribe in the west as well also has more cows, because that's my mom is from that side, and some of my cousins are from the western side, and they have
Right.
more cows. They have more cows to trade. So for us, even the central has more cows to trade, but they also had exposure to other things that they could trade. But a daughter,
your mother
a daughter meant
was your mother traded for a cow?
not really traded. My dad was very unconventional,
Okay.
and I get most of my being unconventional, or most of my resistance to convention from my my pops.
I met your dad.
He's
cool.
like, I'm not even going to fucking marry you. If we're staying together, and then all we need to do is just acknowledge on this piece of paper that we are married. We're not going to do that shit. But everybody else around my family, from my aunties to
your
everybody else.
dad didn't marry your mom?
No.
Wow.
No, he married her in the court sense.
Okay.
He didn't marry her in the traditional sense.
Okay.
But you'll find that in Africa up to now, they respect the traditional sense more than your piece of paper.
Okay.
But all my aunties, they had to exchange cows for them. There had to be a bride price. You're actually taking somebody who has been doing all the work in the courtyard and A, B, C, and D, and then you're taking her to contribute to your family. What are you leaving our family with? There has to be an exchange of goods. But
Right.
there's a flip with some other cultures where instead of the women, it's the men that you have to pay the bride price for. Like India,
Oh yeah.
it's the woman's family that pays the man's family.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
And in American culture, it's not that different in terms of the way like the wedding business is in some ways. For example,
Yes.
you don't pay a cow, but like it's expected, according to some, that a man will buy a ring that is representative of
Of
3 months' salary.
Is it 3 months' salary or is it like half a
Yes.
month? Babe, how much did I pay for the ring? Didn't I pay 3 years salary?
3 years salary.
She's like, right.
I wonder what the salary is.
Yeah.
No, but
Yeah.
the point is like you give the ring,
Yeah.
and when the friends look at the ring, they see how big the ring is, and if the ring isn't very big, then he must not make very much money in 3 months.
Yeah.
That,
Do you
like,
know-
like that's how crazy it is.
But I was thinking about that just recently, and I realized how much of that is about marketing. Like all of this, what people believe about rings and diamonds and this whole narrative that you're telling me is not actually tradition. It's just very brilliant marketing by the people who own diamond mines. How do we keep on having all these men? How do we keep these girls believing that their man loves them by giving them a diamond? And how do we keep all these men giving the money to us to buy the biggest diamond
Oh, that's the
for this woman?
that's the
So
De Beers,
it's-
the De Beers Corporation. there.
exactly. Yeah.
It's a total scam.
Like, it's a total scam.
Yeah.
Like, cause think about a stone. Do you know what blew my mind was when when we realized that diamonds are not scarce. That blew my mind. There are so many diamonds. Like everywhere you look, anywhere you can
about-
mine, you
what
can
about-
probably find a fucking
What
diamond.
about cows?
No.
Are cows scarce?
No. Very scarce. But let me drive my point here.
Okay.
The thing is that the diamonds are not scarce, but it's the people who control the demand and the supply of the diamonds that control the value of the diamond.
Yeah.
Yes, that control the value of this diamond. So that blew my mind in its very sense that there are people who just buy diamonds, mine them, store them somewhere in a vault, and only keep regulating the supply in order to drive up the price. That blew my mind, and that's what dictates diamonds being some of the most prized items on the market, but it isn't a rare material. It's just something you can find anywhere, except that the mining of it and who owns the mine is who controls the price of what you're having.
Yeah.
Yeah, now going back to the cow. Cows are actually some of the most prized possessions when it comes to indigenous Africans. They don't look at gold as something precious.
Right. You have to feed them.
Like
It's hard to make them have babies.
No. For the cows, for the Africans, gold, like going back to Asian Africa and all these other places, you're not going to eat gold. That's why when the Europeans arrived, they gave it to the Europeans for free.
Mm-hmm.
So the Europeans went back to their place and they're like, oh, this shit is valuable. Where did you get this shit from? From Africa. What did you do to have to get it? Like, they give it to us for free. Like, you're kidding me. Like, you get me?
Yeah.
So they came back for it
Like,
and
wait
enslaved the Africans.
Wait till we bring them
But-
some cows.
Yes, but for the Africans, it was more like, yeah, take this shit. We decorate with this shit. Like, it wasn't like as valuable.
Right.
Except for certain kings who will realize that it was valuable to certain parts of the world and amassed some of it and began trading with it. But to Africans, having a camel, a donkey, or a cow, those are some of the most important possessions, because from you can eat a cow. The cow can reproduce and you can marry a wife with it. But with gold, they're going to be like, what the fuck am I going to do with this stone, with this shiny stone, except just decorate it? What am I going to do with it? It's not going to reproduce. It's not going to give me... I'm not going to be a man of stature, because stature was measured by how many... how much livestock did you have in your crow, you know? So the value of the girls were actually measured. If a man had one son and 7 daughters, he knew he was going to have to make he knew he was going to make a lot of money from the daughters. And if he had 7 sons and only 1 daughter, he knew he was going to have to lose wealth. Or the sons had to make more cows and more goats and go steal it from somewhere and start a war from somewhere in order for them to marry.
Interesting.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense. So we
wish everybody more cows.
yeah. No, we have been surfing the wave of history, going through the 1600s, going through Africa, and we have been going through all of these other communities just to find out what makes them tick, and also to learn about other traditions, other sports. What was it like? What's the female experience like? We'll be diving into most of these other issues even in other podcasts. But for now, it's your boy GNL Zamba. Remember to be good to yourselves. Equality. Treat your women well. Don't treat them like cows, And let there be more love in the world, and surf the wave of history with love, and seek the joy of happiness that lies within the cove, which you told me is called. It's called a cove?
Huh?
What's it called? The cove when you're in the middle of the cove?
In the middle of the
wave. What is it called?
the cave.
When
No.
the wave is in a sea circle
Yeah,
and the
it's a-
person is in the middle of that. What's it
A
called?
tube.
He didn't tell
Or
me
a
it was
barrel.
The barrel, yes. So keep on surfing in the middle of the barrel.
Get barreled, babies.
Yes, get barrel babies, and we'll see you on the next one. Peace.
Baboon Force. A legend. Uganda yani.